Welcome to the very first podcast from Mayhem Radio. Not one with music as such, just one where we're going to be waffling. It's me, Gary, we have Andrew, and we have Mr. Gaz Neon.
Hello.
Hello.
There we go. Right, so this is the first one, and we're kind of winging it. So this could be a car crash, or it could be pure gold.
Sometimes fly by the seat of your pants is what works.
Yeah, right, so we might as well start off with the rapidly closing festival season. I mean, that's us into May now. Festivals are going to be coming thick and fast.
Yeah.
Of course, the big one on the horizon will be Download at the beginning of June, but there's so many festivals in and around now and the end of August. So, talking about Download, for me personally, the lineup sucks. There's a few bands you want to see, but generally the balance of all the stages is way off. And I've seen on some Download forums about Guns N' Roses potentially doing a 3-hour set like they have been trying to do on tour. 3 hours of Axl in his current vocal capacity.
And not just that, in the festival setting, with curfews and stuff like that, I don't think a 3-hour set's going to work.
Yeah, I mean, who's getting shortchanged at the other end of the day?
Yeah, exactly, because that means everybody on the bill below them has to lose a certain amount of time from their set just so that Guns N' Roses can do 3 hours. I honestly don't think that that's appropriate, to be honest with you. I think that yes, they're legendary, the Guns N' Roses, but the fact of the matter is they're still riding a wave of nostalgia, and there's no new material on the horizon. So why the hell should they get 3 hours?
Yeah, I mean, that was a rumour. I haven't seen it officially confirmed. To be honest, I didn't actually go to the length of looking for it because I've seen some recent footage on YouTube of Axl, and he was out of key on several songs. I thought, I'll just bypass that. Could you imagine that? You're at a festival and they decide to play, November Rain and Estranged back to back. You might as well go back to your tent for a nap and come back. You'll not have missed anything.
I don't know. I think if you were watching a Guns N' Roses set, as long as they played the good stuff, because let's face it, there couldn't be quite a lot of filler with some of the stuff they've produced towards the end of the career. As a nostalgic greatest hits set, I think you could probably get away with it. I think I'd probably enjoy it as long as they didn't play Knocking on Heaven's Door, because my God, that's a bad cover version. But yeah, I know what you're saying about the epics, throwing Estranged, the trilogy, isn't it? It's the Guns N' Roses trilogy of November Rain, Estranged, and the other one that lasts forever.
Coma.
Yes, no, it's not that one. There's the three ballad love songs. Is it Don't Cry as well? The three love song trilogy kind of thing. Yeah.
Which they didn't just make once; they made twice.
Yeah,
that's the sort of thing. If you're going to inject three sort of magnum opus, sort of epic tracks like that, you need to have at least 3 or 4 tracks between each of them just to break it up, and so that you're not sort of sitting there falling asleep into your pint sort of thing. Because I think that's definitely what was happening with that one.
I mean, I remember going back into the late 90s when they were doing the live DVDs and live VHS as it was back in the day. I think it was live in Japan. It seemed to go on forever, but they'd got the balance right in the set. There was nothing too, like, they wouldn't do too many ballady power numbers. They would always break it up with something in between. So yeah, musically I think they could do a 3-hour set. Whether they should, again, like you said, to the detriment of other bands, possibly not.
Yeah.
And for the impartial fan as well, this goes somewhere to talking about the bands doing full albums at a festival as well. You've got to appeal to a broad spectrum of fans that might be there on the day.
Yeah.
And doing a 3-hour set probably put a lot of people off, I think.
Yeah, and when you look at I don't know how to describe it, but the just complete and utter mismatchment and mismanagement of the stages, it's absolutely unbelievable. I mean, you've got Creator that are right down sort of like, they're not the kickoff band on the second stage, but they're not far from it. A band that have been about for as long as they have would probably draw a crowd, but they're stuck on the second stage instead of getting a chance on the main stage. And some of the acts on the main stage, I'm looking at it and thinking, well, that's a load of tripe. Yet you've got bands like Creator that have got an astonishingly good back catalogue. It's like the third act on the second stage.
Yep.
I know they always say that you can't please everyone with a festival lineup and a bill and all that, but does this go somewhere towards hinting at the demographic to which Download, is aimed at in this day and age? You've got, I can't remember the bill off the top of my head, but you have your, should we say, scene bands who are riding high on the billing, whereas again established bands like Creator might be second or third opening on a lesser stage. So
I've got it up here. So So the main stages are actually not too bad. I mean, there's nothing worth getting up early for, but you've got, so the Friday you've got Boston Manor, Avatar, Dragon Force. Personally, I would probably have Avatar above Dragon Force these days. Marmozets. Then you've got Volbeat, Bullet, and Avenged. Personally, I would put Volbeat above the two of them.
I don't see how Marmozets get to be, middle of the day either, but that's just my own opinion.
And then, headlining the second stage, you've got You Me at 6. I mean, yeah, Jonathan Davis and Andrew WK are 2 places down on the same stage.
Then again, does Davis do his dubstep thing nowadays, or has he got proper rock music?
No, he's released a couple of tracks. To be honest, it's Burn Light.
As you would expect.
Yeah, as you would expect.
It's a bit drab and it's a bit insipid. It's not really much to write home about. That's just a couple of lead-off tracks. There might be more sort of interesting stuff on the album, but if that is the impression and the sort of vibe of the overall album, it'll be something pretty forgettable.
Yeah. I mean, since when did the Hives merit? I mean, they're a headliner on the third stage on the Sunday. I've never seen their name coming up on the circuit.
They peaked 10 years ago.
Not maybe more.
Yeah, when they did, the couple of hits that they got, that suddenly they were on Glastonbury stages and other such thing, but they never seemed to follow that through with anything of any substance apart from maybe that one track that everybody loved. And even so good, the name evades me at this time.
And I mean, just looking at that second stage on the Saturday, I mean, you've got Parkway Drive headlining it. That I can understand.
Yeah,
Baby
definitely.
Metal are backing them up. Then you look at the quality of the bands going further down. Askin Alexandria, L7, Bury Tomorrow, Corrosion of Conformity, One More Death, Von Herzen Brothers, then Power Flow. So actually, the earlier you're there, the more enjoyable that stage is.
Yeah. Again, demographics and what they're in, I suppose. I think
you've got Corrosion of Conformity right down towards the bottom, whereas if they were to play Bloodstock, they would be probably mid-afternoon.
Yeah,
and I think they'd probably get quite high billing at somewhere like Hammerfest as well. They'd be pushing for a headliner slot, but again, it could be just what they're aiming for.
I certainly think Blackstone Cherry are now being groomed to take a headline slot, because that's them got their special guest slot to Guns N' Roses on Saturday. So
and AB have had that slot last year as well, so I definitely think that Andy Coppin's just been slowly moving them up the bill, readying them to see how it goes, and he did that with A7X as well.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have they played Download now?
Which one?
Cherry.
More times than I think just about anybody else.
Yeah, I think they may have played 5 times. They've headlined the second stage twice, 3 times.
Yeah.
So
if that is 5 times, that's 5 times in 7 years?
Yeah.
That's quite prolific, I think, for any outfit, really.
Anyway, I think we've waffled about Download enough. I mean, really.
Download being the biggest of the summer, you are probably going to put more emphasis on it, but really when you look at it, it's not grabbed my attention for a good couple of years now, and then going to Bloodstock last year and having such a good time, and there being the lack of the complete and utter idiots that you get at Download, and actually things like the toilets being of reasonable condition, even sort of like come the Monday morning, things like that have put Bloodstock way and above Download in my estimation.
Yeah. I mean, Bloodstock's a far superior festival. It's probably down to its size as well. If it was to get any bigger, that might shift the goalposts a wee bit in terms of how good it is. I mean, we don't know. I mean, the bigger you get, the harder it is to keep everybody happy.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much of how good it is, it's how enjoyable would your experience be while you were there. I mean, we were there for the Saturday. It was noticeably busier on that day, whether that was due to Ghost and some other bands, but I think we discussed this after the event. You could fit another maybe 5,000 people in that arena to boost the capacity to maybe 20,000. So, and I don't think it'd have too much of a detrimental effect on the enjoyment of being able to get around the arena, get a drink, go to the facilities, in and out. It wouldn't damage it too vastly, I don't think.
No, I don't think so, because if there's one thing that they did at Download, and it was rather contentious, is they reduced the amount of portaloos that was there, and apparently caused some gigantic queues, whereas there was never anything like that at Bloodstock the whole weekend. You didn't have to wait very long, and you were in a loose. So I do think that festivals, especially festivals like Download, should look at what Bloodstock do and maybe take something from that and actually implement it, i.e. the campsite is practically right on the doorstep of the arena, whereas at Download it isn't.
Yeah.
But
the problem
I suppose it's all personal taste.
Yeah, of course it is. But if you've got 100,000 punters, trying to get those campsites on the fringes of the main arena is going to be quite a challenge. I think. Obviously, you got to be able to make access and egress for, say, emergency services and stuff. So you've got to spread these things out a touch. But when it becomes a 3-mile walk from your tent just to see a band from half a mile away, you got to question. You've got to question just logistically how things are working out.
Yeah.
But if they're selling 80,000 tickets a year and they can still get the bands they want, so it seems to be working in that regard.
So that's the big one at that end of the summer. At the other end of the summer, of course, we've got Bloodstock. And when the first bands were announced, I was like, it's not too bad, especially with Gojira and Nightwish being announced last year, while we were there. But as the bands have come out, there are more and more I'm thinking I would love to go back this year. I mean, the lineup just looks solid.
It certainly does.
Yeah, I wish I could wangle it this year, but there's just not a chance in hell for me this year. And when the first batch of bands came out, I was like, it looks okay. It looks fine, And there's more bands being added, and I'm just like, oh, you shower of bastards. I can't make it. And you put in some of this quality stuff, it's like Suicidal Tendencies and stuff. I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, just look at that Friday. Feed the Rhino, Onslaught, Memoriam, Wednesday 13, Bloodbath, Suicidal Tendencies, Camelot, Emperor, and Judas Priest. I mean, you could easily camp out at the main stage. You're not going to want to, because there's cracking bands elsewhere. So
I think they've probably, okay, again, personal preference, but they've probably put too much good stuff on in some regards.
Yeah,
you just how would you fit all these things in?
Yeah, I mean,
so it's a nice conundrum to have. Certainly, you don't want to be sat thinking, I've got to wait for this to finish before something else comes on. But
I mean, for me personally, I think the Saturdays is slightly weaker. I would dip in and dip out. Certainly, I mean, there's Power Trip, Orden Ogan, Septic Flesh, Venom Inc. I would definitely want to catch them.
Yeah.
Combi Christ. Naturally, Ailstorm would be a must see.
Of course.
And then Cannibal Corpse and Gojira. I like Gojira, but would I stay there, or would I maybe go and find something else? I don't know. I mean,
although they do stagger it so that your headliner is your headliner, don't they?
Yeah, so I think the second
you could
stage,
either trot off and those bands come after, don't they? The headliners there, so
you'd still be able to catch like the Orphan Land. I mean, certainly they have hit the ball out the park with that one this year.
Up until last year, and I'm not really sure what persuaded me to go, because I'd not really had much of an interest in doing an outdoor festival for many years, and it just bit me. And then all of a sudden it's like I've got that bug again, because it was such a a good vibe. Obviously bumping into Youtbue, Boneheads for a couple of days were a blast, but just the whole thing was just like, I've got that bug again now.
I mean, we went to Download 2013 and 2015, and it was like, we might return a bit down the line, because the expensive Download well outweighs the expensive Bloodstock. It is so much more. But then they started putting together last year's Bloodstock lineup, and I was like, oh yes, definitely got to go to that. And now that I have been to that, I know for a fact that I'll probably never go back to Download for many reasons.
Well, of course, so that's the two big ones out the way, but there's plenty of smaller ones in between. You've got Wildfire Fest up here in Lanarkshire, dotted all over the country. More and more small festivals seem to be popping up, and I know, Gaz, you're going to a couple, aren't you?
Yeah, we're going to debut Lostock Festival over in the kind of Cheshire, Lancashire way, which is a 2-day event. It's a Saturday, Sunday with camping, and then we're doing Stone Death, which for many people who might not be familiar with that, it's some old school Monsters of Rock fans who've come together to bring back the good old days of the single stage old school festival vibe. So that'll be down at the Newark Showground in August.
I hope that takes off as well, because that would, a single stage, single day sort of vibe is something that I grew up with, and I truly miss, to be honest with you. It's all right these like 2-3 days, but sometimes when you look at it, the finances, when you actually come away, you think, I didn't spend that much, and then you look at your bank account thinking, I spent a lot more than what I thought. Whereas with one day, that's less likely to happen.
Yeah.
But there's also Amplified. That looks absolutely amazing this year.
Done it just. Last year's looked good, but this year looks just, phenomenally better from a personal point of view. But there's just so many. I mean, has anybody actually tried logging what is being touted as a festival these days, whether it's a 1 day or a 3-day weekend kind of thing? Because there's got to be 20 or 30 throughout what we class as the summer months, May to August. Yeah. It's just unbelievable that they're people, the scene's no good, but people are running these things year after year now. They're not all first year events. So
been Amplified, been going a couple of years now.
Mm-hmm. And Breaking Bands is carrying on. Might be a slightly different event, but it's it's a good few years down the line. The Hard Rock Hell things are just they're exploding.
Yeah, they really are taking off.
Yeah, definitely.
And they're always very, very well attended as well, that I've seen.
What's great about ones like that is they tend to dig out the bands that could fall through the cracks and you could miss. So you're getting a whole new run of bands that you've never heard, potentially, that you're going to start really loving. And then, of course, that raises their profile. They're able to do more, get more places. So it's, people keep on talking about, metal and rock being dead from time to time. It goes in cycles and stuff. But I think currently, and probably for the foreseeable next few years, I actually think the rock and metal's well and truly alive and kicking.
And it's just getting in gear. Mainstream, it's certainly not your mainstream stuff either, because you got like Beer Mageddon down in Reading, you got Mammoth Fest, which I think is on is Southampton,
isn't it? Yeah.
They look, and there's a couple of other ones that are just putting on full day of brutal metal as well. Not just like heavy rock kind of stuff. There's some proper savage festivals. Even Damnation, which is quite a broad, compassing of bands over there.
Yeah, they just dropped an announcement.
I missed that one.
Batushka are playing.
Who? Batushka. Sorry, I thought you said Batushka.
Isan's playing. They announced a couple more, and it really did seem to sort of like those that are. I mean, I was going to go one year, but it just fell through, and it's just festivals aren't going to be an issue for me this year at all because I just can't do it. But the regulars was like, oh yes, please, thank you very much. Can we have some more quickly, please? And it's like, well, they've just been one. Give them a chance.
I think the problem with Damnation now is again they've gone a bit download and they've oversubscribed to what they were originally setting out to do. There were lots of feedback of I don't want to wait 40 minutes to try and get a drink, by which time I've missed a band. So I think the layout and possibly the number of stages that they've got for the number of bodies that are in the university up in Leeds isn't quite working as well as possibly it might have done, say, a decade ago when it was it's in its infancy to some degree. But if they take these things on board rather than just thinking of the bigger the almighty dollar at the end or the product, you've got customer satisfaction is key, I think, to a lot of these things. So
absolutely.
Keep people happy, they keep returning.
Absolutely, yeah. So the live scene or the festival circuit in Britain is thriving, it has to be said.
I mean, and a lot of it, you've got Bloodstock, which is sort of like a mid-sized festival, you've got Download, which is the Gargantua festival. But what really pleases me is a lot of them are more grassroots than anything else, and it's bands that, like Gary said, that you maybe wouldn't normally have heard, and you get to see them and think, oh yeah, I'm going to go and check out the Bandcamp, and you pay for the album and stuff like that, and you maybe get some merch, and you sort of like spread the word. And even if a band comes away from a festival with like 25 people sort of like buying their stuff, downloading, getting their album, spreading the word, that in itself, I mean, I'm sorry, but somebody opening the fourth stage at Download isn't going to make much of an impact. Whereas I think somebody that's got a decent slot on something like Amplified is going to make something like that's going to make a deeper impact to their potential upward curve than anything else.
I think what you find with these little events as well, that you've got proper music fans go to them to some regard. It might be a bit unfair to say that all Download fans are just there to rock up, get smashed, and then wake up around 2-3 o'clock and then might go see a band. But there is an element of that in the mega festivals, a bit like Glastonbury and stuff. Frank and Tarquin are just doing MDMA all weekend and might see 2 or 3 bands. But Amplifieds and all your single, maybe 2-day festivals, there is a lot of hardcore fans who will turn up for the first band and watch bands all day long, which is great, because I mean, Andrew, you've played in bands. I can't imagine there's much worse to playing to one man and his dog while everybody else is.
They did that a couple of times because and it is, you still go out there, you still give 100%, but just every time you have to do that, and you do get lost in the music, you're having a good time, but it's just in the back of your mind, that you're sort of like playing to, one man is dogging a couple of chickens or something like that, and it is kind of soul destroying, and it makes you wonder what exactly do you have to do to get noticed or start getting a reasonable following. And the band that I was in for the best part of the 90s, we did a couple of sold out shows at the now defunct Studio 24, or Carlton Studios as it was known back in the day, and then things just went tits up for us. So, but yeah, the whole thing of people being more interested in going off and getting drunk or whatever, or doing whatever at a festival, that comes back to the whole thing. If you're opening the fourth stage at Download, you're not going to really make much of a difference. You can say always play Downloads, but it's not going to make much of a difference, because at that time of the day, I would say probably 75% of the people that would actually go into the arena and watch bands and stuff like that are still zen up in the tent.
Yeah.
Whereas something like Amplified or Wildfire, where you've got a lot of hardened music fans that it's not just about having a drink, having a good time, but it's taking in some good music. That's where, if you're in a sort of, obviously in a smaller band, and you want to get that festival sort of vibe and experience under your belt, and you want to get people sort of paying attention to, definitely the better place to play.
Right, so on that note, because we could debate and discuss and dissect every lineup from now until the end of the year, but let's keep this within the reasonable time scope. Rounding up the festivals, Heavy Scotland have finally made an announcement after months of silence, and they've added 4 bands to their bill, which is looking extreme, to say the least. And I'm wondering if they're maybe making it too extreme, because you've got to remember, in order to keep the festival going, you need to sell tickets. Yep. And diehards, yes, will buy the tickets, but you're needing the other ones, the casual listeners, to come in as well. And I mean, Carcass are the only headliner announced so far. You've got Decapitated, who are probably going to be special guests. Exhumed, Nervosa, Hate, Gamma Bomb, Corrupt Moral Altar, Austin Front, which are basically a version of Rammstein, Sisters of Suffocation, Martyrium, Porian, Defacer, and Perpetua. There's nothing that says just rock out and have a blast. It's all balls to the wall and stay out the pit.
How much of a difference is that to last year's lineup, though? Because I think they were quite some savage acts on the lineup.
There was things like Shiraz Lane on last year's bill, but there really wasn't that much in the way of cross-genre interaction with this at all. It was just, a lot of it was just straight down the road, heavy, extreme, brutal sort of thing. And they struggled last year.
Yeah, they did. The place was half full, and the Corn Exchange can easily take a few thousand right to the back, but it was barely half full. And I think part of the problem with Heavy Scotland is the organisers around it. Yeah, they go to all these festivals and, we love that band, but what they're doing is they're bringing in bands that they personally like.
Yeah.
They're making a festival for themselves rather than making a festival for the punters. And they've asked, who do you want to see? But it's more a case of, if enough people tick the same box that they tick, they'll book them.
But to be honest, Caitlin and Co are not very good at listening to people that would say, well, I would like to go to your festival, but the thing is, there's one act that I want to see, and I'm not paying over £100 for one act. And then, sort of like, well, what do you want? More variation, more cross-genre, something for everyone. It doesn't have to be, straight down the middle extreme, because the sort of act and build that they're in the middle of putting together in the early 90s, that might have sold what they're looking to sell, but death metal and stuff like that isn't in the same place it was in the early 90s. So it really befuddles me as to why they would take such a blanket approach to it.
Because it's not set itself up as an extreme festival either, I don't think, because it's coming across as heavy, which covers a whole host of genres within metal. So it could be a trying time for them. I know they had obviously they don't want to come across as too much like some of the other Scottish festivals that they're, shall we say, in competition with. So you would think a bit more diversity would be a greater selling point. I think, is it Lords of the Land and
and of course they've already announced for next year that they're getting tankard.
Right. I see. I know they were a big hoo-ha about changing dates and stuff like that, which just comes across as a bit of a shitty promotional work, but that's a different story. But you wouldn't want to be, I wouldn't say a clone, but too similar, because, you know, if you've had an Extreme Metal Fest, you've already had your Extreme Metal Fest, you know, to get people to come for essentially what has already been done is asking quite a bit of people, I think. So, yeah, maybe a bit of diversity across the board. I mean, not to the extent of, you know, glam metal bands on there, but, you know.
Yeah, just something a little different. I mean, to be fair, they've only announced one headliner. We don't know who the other headliners are going to be, because there's the Friday night as well now, which they've added. So the doors open at 5:30 on the Friday. I think Defacer are kicking it all off, so that's them on the Friday night. So they get the show rolling, and then after that, that's them done.
Certainly wish them all the best with it, and obviously,
so do I, because Wildfire's really starting to get dug in and become established. But
that's got a very broad spectrum of bands, you know. Some of that,
it has.
Yeah,
and some of the stuff that we've seen from people that we've spoken to, you know, bands and such. You know, they all enjoy going up there because it is, you know, they get to see bands that they wouldn't normally on their standard lineups and stuff. So
I just think that I don't know, Caitlin and Co seem to be trying to shoot for something that they're maybe not able to attain yet. They're maybe trying to walk before they can crawl. Whereas, I mean, last year they did 2 days, and they were asking people to donate money to the festival on the Sunday because they'd run out of cash. I think that maybe last year they should have started off with 1 day and then looked at how that went, and then maybe looked to expanding it to 2 this year. Maybe just built it up until they got to a point where, you know, everything was working properly and it was an established name.
Yeah. I mean, there's only so much faith you can put into the old book them and they shall come kind of attitude, because unfortunately that's not the case anymore, is it? So whether it's pessimistic of us or whether it's just people, you know, shooting for the stars too soon, but we just don't want these things to fail, because, you know, losing another festival is not good for metal. I mean, I know we've just said there's 20 or 30 going on, but, you know, you don't want to see these things tailing off.
Fall flat in their face, and we want it to succeed. We want it to become big, and because, I mean, look at Bloodstock. It started out indoor, and now look at it, and I don't see why Scotland can't have something on a smaller scale here. But
if that's kind of like something, it's like an aspirational thing, isn't it? You know, you've seen how well it can be done if you've got a good business module and a promoter and a booker who has their finger on the pulse.
Yeah, and there is a gap now that you know, there are sites, because I mean, Dalkeith Country Park just down the road, they're having a Sunday sessions thing, and they've got bands like Kaiser Chiefs and the Happy Mondays turning up. So Edinburgh seems to have become a hub for all these pop-up festivals. Just, you know, 15 miles the other way, you've got Linlithgow, and they've got Texas, and goodness knows who else playing. So, you know, there are a lot of festivals, but there's nothing like Heavy Scotland. Certainly not on the scale that we're wanting. So it needs to stay. They just need to be smart about how they book.
Yeah, and I also think that they could, Caitlin and company could learn a lot from, I think, Gregory and Vicky Hungerford about approachability.
Yeah, that's something that a lot of promoters can be quite elusive, shall we say, and aloof.
Yeah, you get Adam and Vicky walking about the crowd at Bloodstock, and if they're not busy, you can approach them and they'll stop and talk to you and post photos and everything like that.
But not just that, they're doing a Q&A as well, aren't they? You know, there's a lot of interaction going on. They've got a face on, whether it's through their own private social media stuff. They're out there, aren't they? They're able to be, you know, they're out there for you to reach out to if you need them. So
yeah, definitely.
You don't want a promoter that disappears for months on end and, you know, radio silence.
Well, I reckon that will do on that. We've covered all that, and we've aired our grievances, as it were.
Yep.
As is our right as journalists, he says, giving the old air quotes.
Or more appropriately, grumpy old men.
Yes, that's very true.
Yes, that is very true.
And fans, let's not forget fans of heavy music.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we just want the scene to be, you know, alive, and, you know, instead of floundering, we want it to be bustling and lively, and it's not too much to ask, I don't think.
Right. No. So, as grumpy old men, let's turn it around. Let's be a bit more cheery. And albums, what have you been listening to the last week or so, and any recommendations?
Well, as you two are aware, and as many of our listeners probably won't be aware, I disappeared off to Whitby for the last couple of days, so everything I've listened to over the last week or so has been very much goth, which might, you know, get some kind of repulsion, but, you know, fuck it, love the stuff. So
I'm not listening to that goth.
Yeah. So if anybody's interested, I've been listening to 1919. They've got a new album out called Bloodlines. Maybe many remember these from like the post-punk stuff in the back late 70s, early 80s. They had a track called Caged, which set them alight. And The Last Cry from Brighton.
Now, did you or did you not buy your first vinyl in 10 years?
I did, as it happens, yeah. I'd had a couple of sherbets and some very hard selling from Tash. And I walked home with a double LP, which is rather pretty, and will now just go sit in a box somewhere for the next 20 odd years until I buy a turntable. The wife has got stacks of vinyl, which she wants to convert to digital before they become unplayable. Yeah. But we've got some boxes and such. But yeah, the last time I bought vinyl was, and if I remember this correctly, the year that Metallica released a reprint of all their albums up until and including Load, which will have been 2005, I think.
Ooh.
Or earlier.
Can't remember.
I can't remember.
So whatever year they came out, just after that they did a reprint of all the records. So I went down to HMV when Bradford had an HMV and forked out a good, I think, £18 an album. So 100 and some quid for Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, and Justice, Black, Load and Reload. I don't think they did the covers. So I think it was those 7 albums. So yes, that's a long time since I bought vinyl, because to be honest, it doesn't interest me. This little purchase at the weekend of the latest Last Cry album called Goodbye was more of a collector's completion thing, because I kind of love this band to bits. So yeah, that's more than what that was.
Yeah, I can see me actually doing that with King Witch. If I go to see them in June,
you should, by the way.
I can see me walking away with the vinyl version of an album I already have on CD.
And they've got about 3 or 4 t-shirts out as well, so you might want to get some overtime in.
Oh, damn it.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely going to go and see Monolith Cult and King Witch and the other band whose name I can't remember, but I think I'll be putting some shekels away for that.
That should be a very good night. Having seen 2 of those bands only a couple of weeks ago near me, I can highly recommend that gig to you all.
There we go. We've had it from Gaz that you need to get yourself to wherever they're playing near you. And we're not going to tell you where, because that would sound like we were organised. So go and Google it.
Yeah, it's...
Or check our Facebook, because we have gigs and live events in a folder in there.
Yeah, and the nearest clue you're going to get, it's Nedry Street in Edinburgh, but it's not Bannerman's.
I still don't have a clue.
I can't remember the name of the place, so I'm going to have to look it up myself. But as for albums, Prevail 2, yeah, quite a lot. Light the Torch, quite an awful lot. King Witch, an awful lot. And that, at the moment, is about it. I've kind of not slacked on listening to new albums coming out, but I just sort of gave it a break because it was becoming a couple a day, and it was getting to the point where I was like, oh God, just calm down, because I thought to myself, what, you're trying to listen to every single album that comes out this year? If you do that, you ain't going to be able to sort of top 30 at all.
Yeah. The other thing as well is, if put in 3 or 4 albums on a day, do you really absorb or remember what you've listened to first? I know that I don't sometimes. If I've got 3 or 4 albums on, I can't think straight back and go, right, track 4 on whatever sounds like this riff or whatever. So
I mean, I've rated them as I've been listening to them, but
I've been doing that as well.
I just needed to sort of take a wee hiatus from that, and I'll get back to it very soon. But I mean, the first album I'm going to tackle when I get back to listen to them is a gargantuan listen.
Oh, Therion. Oh, yeah, I got a wee bit through that and thought, you know what, I don't have the time. I really don't.
So what I've decided I'm going to do is it's a 3 hour 3 discs, isn't it?
Something like that, yeah.
Love that. Right, it's 3 hour 3 discs. So I'm going to listen to one disc, give it a score. Listen to the second disc, give it a score. Same with the third, and then I'll create an average score from over the 3 discs and rate it that.
Crack on. We'll take your word for it.
I think the thing to remember about the Therion Epic release is that they've done it as a full, almost like a score would be to a performance. So you have a couple of minute interludes, which aren't actually songs as such. They are vocal performances that work within the script or the playlist for the show, let's call it. But there are some cracking songs in there, and the good thing is, having seen those in Manchester not so long since, the new ones, while on record, sound like they could come from a classic opera. When they played live, they'd sit so seamlessly with the classic stuff like Temega Therion and Seven Secrets and stuff like that. So that's certainly a good reference to the new stuff.
Yeah,
but it's not too far away, but it's also new and different again at the same time.
Albums for me, well, beyond the big ones like King Witch, which I've been still listening to, Judas Priest, Firepower, I'm still listening to that, and Miles Kennedy's album. I've kind of faded in that a wee bit just with the quality of the newer stuff coming through. Blaze Bayley's new album, The Infinite Entanglement Part 3, was good. Not as good as the other two parts though. I'm kind of it's a bit like a George Lucas thing, you know. You've built it is actually like Return of the Jedi. You know, you've got A New Hope, then you've got Empire, which is brilliant, and then you've got Return of the Jedi, which ties it up all in a nice, neat bundle. But it's easy, and I think that's how those albums have gone. A great start, brilliant middle, and it's the end. But of late, in fact, this week I have been playing rather obsessively the new Riot V album, Armour of Light.
Because you mentioned this only a couple of weeks ago, I think, after one of your shows, you were hinting at just how good that could be. Yeah, and folk listening, if they like power metal, they need to get on this album. This album is start to finish just amazing. It's got a proper old school power metal feel, but doesn't feel or sound dated. It sounds fresh and new, and it's just cracking.
4 tracks of it, and I've loved every single one. So if that's just the 4 tracks, then bring it on. I mean, I think
there's 14 tracks on it, and I haven't found a dud one. As you get kind of over halfway, they drop in a little change, you know, a slight change in style, but still keeping it within the power metal, which adds a nice bit of, didn't expect that coming. That was interesting. So it keeps it fresh, you know, that point where you're thinking, these are just filler tracks. No, they change it up at just the right time, so you're thinking, hang on a minute, and it focuses you again to listen to the tail end of the album. Blackstone Cherry, I've been listening to that. Family Tree, not as bad as we feared, and a lot of the songs are well written. They're very rootsy, but they're slow burners. You know, you think, oh well, I'm not sure about that, but the more you play it, the more you think, actually, see, when they start playing this live, this will be amazing. So it's a good album. Probably a step up from Kentucky, which had a few good tracks, but there was a fair bit of filler mixed in there. I've also listened to the Dead Daisies' Burn It Down, which has been getting ridiculous amount of promotion on Planet Rock and all the major outlets. It's a good album. I don't know that it's got lasting appeal for me personally, but it is a good album. Didn't wow me, but I enjoyed it. And the only other one I have listened to a fair bit is the new Winter Filleth album, The Hallowing of Heirdom. That is a stunning album, right out of left field. I mean, you know, we saw Winter Filleth at Bloodstock last year, and they were really good on stage, and this is a total departure. It's as you said, Gaz, in a previous conversation, it's those interludes and sort of fillers and bridges between songs embellished and made songs themselves, and it is just an incredible album to just stop and just listen to. So yeah,
that seems to be a wrap on albums, because we did have a slew of albums coming out, but it just seems to have calmed down quite a bit.
Yeah.
We keep looking at the calendar and you keep seeing more announcements and you're thinking, how many more?
I know, and there are still some big albums to come. I am looking at right now. This week, Dimmu Borgir release Aeonian, Isan release an album. We've got Parkway Drive, Shinedown also release an album this week. And then going into next week, Seven Dust, Praying Mantis. There's an old name.
Yep.
Bad Wolves, Amorphous released their new album later on in the month. At the Gates as well. Burn the Priest, Five Finger Death Punch, Overkill are releasing a live DVD. There's a fair bit. Candlemass are releasing the House of Doom EP. You've got Jonathan Davis, Lordy released Sexorcism later on. So yeah, of course, then you roll into June, and the big one, and probably the one that's going to break Ghost in such a huge way. 1st of June, Prequel comes out, so there's a fair bit on the horizon, the immediate horizon.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just scrolling through. You've got Tremonti in June, which, based on the first 2 tracks, excuse me, that could be a stunning album. One to avoid at the end of June would be Bullet for My Valentine's Gravity.
Oh God, I don't know what they've done to this sound, but they've dumbed it down, they've commercialised it, and they say it's honest and from the heart, but I look at it rather cynically, and I think they're just trying to create a cash cow.
Yeah, right, but they're trying to hit that commercial success, but the kind of music they played, if they just stuck to that and done it really well, it probably would have come in time, but they've tried to push for it too quickly. Plus Matt Tuck's vocal issues hindered them as well.
Quite a bit. I mean, usually now when they do some of the older stuff live, it's usually somebody else doing the guttural vocals because he's not able to do that properly anymore. Yeah. So I suppose when your vocalist loses part of the range of and what was an integral part of the sound, that does actually mean you've got to compromise. But I don't think so much they've compromised. I think so much as that it's not even a sellout. They've just gone so far from where they originally were. I mean, bands evolve and mature and stuff like that, but I don't necessarily think that Bullet's sound has evolved or matured all that much. They've just gone in a direction that they hope will mass sell.
Lyrically, they've never really evolved beyond the teenage drivel, the teenage angst. They've never got beyond those lyrics.
Well, some people have gotten them to mature as a lyricist, and there's a lot of bands that mature as musicians, but they're just one band that I don't think have matured in very many aspects at all. I might be a bit cynical, but I just think that they've just not done everything wrong. I just think they're doing everything for a reason. I think that reason's dollar.
Yeah, very, very possibly. And just looking, I mean, it is a fairly reasonable schedule right the way up until July. Devil Driver releasing a covers album in July. That's interesting. That'll be worth a listen potentially. So it's gonna make the album of the year very interesting. And based on what we've already had this year, the mid-year meltdown is going to be something else. And of course, we're just talking about bands that are on the big sort of rosters and that. That's not even scraping the surface of everything else that goes beyond these bands.
Not at all. I mean, because there's a lot of bands setting up pledge music or Indiegogo, and I've already pledged to 2 this year. Obviously I'm picking and choosing exactly what I pledged to, but I pledged to Eva Plays Dead and Synagogue. I was a bit late for Chasing Dragons, but there'll be other bands, and I don't mind doing that. In fact, I love doing it for bands like Synagogue and Eva Plays Dead because it helps you. It sort of brings you into the whole picture. You become part of the album making process because you've helped to finance and stuff like that. Yeah. I pledged to the last Queensryche album, Condition Human, and I think it was still about £15 I paid for the album, and it got posted from the States, and on a sticker from the US Postal Service, it's got a thing with value of content, and they've put $5, yet I paid 15 quid for it. So it was just, I thought, right, you evaluated that at $5 when I paid 15. I says, that's the last time I pledged to one of the more established names. I'd rather pledge to a band that I don't understand why Queensryche and stuff like that are doing it via Pledge Music. So they've got a pretty sizable record deal, and they could probably just do it in the normal fashion. I understand that they want to bring the fans in and get them limited things and stuff like that, but some of the prices and some of the tiers were just extortionate. Yeah. And for them to post it from the States and say the value of what their content was £5 when I paid $5 when I paid 3 times that amount, I thought, no, I would rather pledge to a grassroots band, an up-and-coming band, and a band that are probably infinitely more grateful for the pledges.
Yeah, and I mean, there are some really good bands. I mean, there's bands that we've played here on Mayhem that are probably due a release, like Reign of Fury, who have suggested that an album is on the way. Of course, Jupiter Falls released Face in the Sand Part 1 last year, and just from a couple of Facebook posts earlier on this year, I'm not sure that we will see Part 2 this year like it was planned. I don't know if there's been personal issues with some of the band members and they've kind of taken a step back at the moment. But yeah, that was an album I was going to be looking forward to because Face in the Sand Part 1 was really good, and it came out around about the same time as Cobra and the Lotus released Prevail, and I thought, well, that's 2 first parts of albums. I can't wait until next year when you're guaranteed you're getting 2 albums again. So
yeah, when I interviewed Jupiter Falls a couple of years ago, and they did mention a double album, obviously, like most folk, I was probably under the impression that it would be one vast recording broken down into 2 albums. I thought it might be the old-fashioned, 2 CD release in one go, as opposed to release then a delayed release like the Prevail ones are, which of course were recorded in one full session. So the Jupiter Falls guys have gone for more. We'll do the first part and then we'll move on to the second part. For whatever reason, that, like you say, that's just been a slight delay in that. So hopefully it's nothing serious. I know the band are together and they are touring, well, gigging. Yeah. So there doesn't seem to be any issues in that regard. So they are still a working unit. So they do have lives outside the band, because it is a young band who are part time as well. They do their own thing. So could be any number of reasons why. It could simply funding. Just getting the money together to get into the recording studio and get it all done. So, and
interestingly, because there is no sign of Tool on the schedule yet.
Well, there's a surprise.
That's like I said. They've announced that they're going to be in the studio. We'll probably see it in about 2025.
Isn't there a Perfect Circle album?
Yeah,
yes, there is.
Album coming out, but Tool have hit the studio. Whether they can actually get that all sorted so that it actually drops this year is anyone's guess. But I'm cynical about that and would say I don't think we'll see it this year. I would see sometime next year at the earliest.
Do they have it in them to write an album that will live up to the hype, though?
No. It's Chinese democracy all over again.
Yeah.
The fact that they've left it 12 years up to press, it would have to be one of the best albums ever written, and even if they were to write the best album, I think it's still going to fall short.
I think if anything, they should have just dropped it and gone, bang, there you go, have some of that, rather than all this, will we, won't we? Yes, we will, no, we won't. And building it up, you're just setting yourself up for a fall in some regards. Obviously the guys will think this is the best thing since sliced bread, but whether the fans do, honestly review it in a way that without it fanboying and having the rose tinted glasses and that.
I'm a huge fan of Tool, but it's gotten the whole, are we going to release an album, won't we release an album? It's gotten tedious, it's gotten old, and it just makes you scream at whatever publication you're reading or whatever website you're reading. It just makes you want to scream, get the fuck on with it. But at the end of the day, the Tool are renowned for doing things when they want to do things. They're not going to do whatever people want when they want, because that's just not how Tool work. So I would say early date, sometime next year. If they actually manage to get that out this year, I would be very surprised, but I don't think it's going to happen. And you guys will just have to excuse me for a couple of minutes.
No problem. So one album that has been delayed that we were very much looking forward to hearing, we were actually going to get some global exclusive plays, our friends from Valafar.
Yeah.
And the reason that the album has been delayed is because they've been signed by Transcending Records in America,
which is huge for them.
Absolutely, but opens up a whole new world.
Yeah, and now what they have is just that little bit more sort of backing, and
absolutely.
I mean, the amount of fun they're going to have in the studio, knowing that there's just I don't know if there will be any less pressure on them, or if there'll be more pressure on them now that they have obligations to a label. And
well, the record was done prior to the announcement. When I spoke to you guys and hinted that we were going to get an exclusive play, it was maybe a couple of weeks after this that the announcement was made that they'd signed the contract that weekend. So whether they were in talks about it while they were recording, I'm not sure, but they definitely got everything laid down and recorded and ready to go. And then a new development came along.
Yeah,
we're here at Mayhem Radio, we're absolutely mated up for the guys, which is it's great to see bands that you've invested not just your money in, but you've seen them grow from fledglings and into a good, solid, high quality band. And then, because how many bands do a lot of work and you think this band deserves something, and they just never quite, for whatever reason. And then you see some bands thinking, the fucking hell have you got a record deal? So it's good to see the good guys get a little bit of acknowledgement for their craft. Yeah, so there's a lot to look forward to. I mean, there's so much going on. Of course, Amon Amarth have been writing new material. They may squeeze an album out this year, likely to be early next year though. I don't think there's any need for those guys to rush it just yet. I think
no, they could ride off Jomsviking for a while yet.
Yeah, I think that the reaction to Jomsviking as well was a bit lukewarm to some regards, almost as if they were going by numbers in some fashion. People do say that they've got a sound. Well, yes, they do have a sound, but yeah, I think the Jomsviking was a bit lackluster, I think was one of the words that was used to describe it. So whether they take these things on board, whether they see reviews, or whether they just see the 5 stars, I don't know. But yeah, I don't think there's any need for them to rush anything. Like you say, Jomsviking is still very fresh, so they can use that for some time yet.
Yeah, in fact, you know what? They would be a cracking headliner for Heavy Scotland, and I'd suggested that, but I'm sure in the comments they said that they couldn't get them. I think they were just too far out the bracket for them.
Yeah. Well, again, goes back to what might they've saved by skipping to a shorter number of days, and maybe saving in that regard. So who knows? Without actually knowing the figures that are involved in some of these outfits, it's a difficult one to call. But fans will always scream for the bands that they love, not necessarily knowing just what's involved in booking a lot of them. Yeah. So that's one of the big things. Going back to Youtbue, people scream for I want these international bands, but I think Killing Joke was touted a couple of years ago as being maybe a £10,000 headliner, so if not more these days. Obviously, with the 40-year anniversary coming along, it could be 3 times that these days. So that has to reflect in the ticket price, and the last thing we all want is a ticket price that keeps going up and up and up. So obviously we want bigger bands for the same, if not less money, and that's where marketing and just a bit of nous comes in, I suppose.
Yeah.
Not having ever put a festival on myself, I'm just guessing these things. I could be well off the mark, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I've never done it either. That doesn't stop me having an opinion one way or the other.
Oh, of course not. It's just nice to have some of these things based in a little bit of knowledge, where you can actually say, no, I've done these things and I know how this kind of thing works. But we've done a bit of radio now. We've dealt with PR people, and we've been to events, so you start picking up a little bit here and there, don't you? So we're not complete novices bashing away on keyboards on Facebook, telling everybody that they're wrong and we're right. So
yes, your band sucks, my band's the greatest.
yeah. We do that now and again, obviously, of course, but that's just bravado and stuff. So not trolling in any way, shape or form.
No, so we'll wrap this up. Well, an hour and 5 minutes long. Jeez,
I'm sure there's a lot of
editing to be done.
Yes, there's a lot to be removed.
So we will wrap this up. Any gigs lined up in the next couple of weeks or so?
As it happens, the 12th of May is Manifest, which takes place in Keighley on the Saturday the 12th of May. Evile are coming back to headline. I say coming back to Yorkshire to headline the festival for the first time, which is now in its second year. Memoriam are back. They played last year as special guests. Now, talking to Jackson, the promoter, apparently Memoriam were that impressed last time that they actually requested the opportunity to come back, which is fantastic. So we've got Godthrim, Hamish Glencross, formerly of My Dying Bride, his new outfit. Monolith Cult are playing. Damnation's Hammer, which should be nice seeing those guys live as well. And Thrash Iconcentrics will be there as well.
They'll be good.
Yeah, along with a couple of other bands that escape me at the moment. So Manifest 2, as it is, or whatever they're calling it, it's certainly going to be a good day out.
Excellent.
And it's all for a good cause as well, which is the Manolans Hospice, and obviously anybody who's had their lives affected by cancer in any way will realise just what a good cause that is.
Yeah, indeed. Gig-wise for me, I've got Tremonti at the end of June. I have Volbeat at the beginning of June, and there's a couple of gigs I have my eye on. The Heathen Invasion,
which looks good.
Yep, which looks very good. Valifar, of course, are playing that. That's the 2nd of June. The only problem is that's the Saturday, and on the Sunday, Kingwitch are playing.
Yeah, Monolith Cult, Kingwitch the next night.
So that would be the 2nd, the 3rd, and then on the 6th, I think it's Volbeat.
Right. I've got Monolith Cult, Kingwitch on the 3rd of June. Obviously, Tremonti on the 28th.
Yes.
But that's all I've really got at the moment. I'm really tomorrow I'm going to look at the prices for a Sunday ticket to Horicon here in Edinburgh on the 13th this month. But apart from that, there isn't. Apart from those 3 things, nothing really.
To be honest, I could be at a gig every couple of days, but It's not always possible, unfortunately. Not funding and got to be a good dad, good husband as well. So
yes,
for me, more than anything else, it's not so much the funding, because I have gotten to the point where, unless it's something really worthwhile, I'm kind of steering away from the arena gigs. I'd rather go to the grassroots gigs and the mid-sized gigs, not only because they're cheaper, but I just think you get a better vibe, a better atmosphere.
Although that Def Leppard one certainly has your eye at the moment.
Yeah, the Hysteria, playing the playback of Hysteria in its entirety. But the thing is, the only tickets that are left without, I'm not going to go on to get me in it or anything via GoGo or anything like that, because the prices of the tickets there, as per normal, are just extortionate. But to get them direct from Ticketmaster there's only seated tickets, and they're up in the gods now. But I'm going to check on Twickets for standing tickets for that gig. If that's not possible, then I'm not paying the money to sit in a seat and barely see a thing.
Yeah, right.
I
would reckon on that note, we have waffled enough, and people have had a nice hour and a bit's nap.
Probably.
By the time we'll have edited this down, it probably will be just under the hour. So there we go. That was our first foray into a talk show. Whether or not it was a good idea remains to be seen, but we've done it.
I loved every minute of that.
Yeah, it has been fun.
Do another one of those.
I mean, it's like anything. When we started doing, radio shows, we weren't that, we were novices, we were noobs. We weren't sure what was going to constitute a good show and what wasn't. But it's going to be the same with this. As we go along, we're going to fine tune it and probably be a lot more succinct about it, and topics will flow a little bit more naturally and stuff like that. So
yeah,
I'm not worried that we'll get better at it. It's just give us time.
Does that mean we've got to prep
homework?
Oh, thank God for that.
Oh.
It might
breaking out in a cold sweat.
No, I just think that given time, it'll become more natural. That's all. I'm not going to do any prep. I mean, I do as little prep for my radio shows as possible, so I'm not going to prep for this.
Right. On that note, I think we are done. So, from us here at Mayhem, we hope you enjoyed, and please come back again.
Please.
Please. Please. That was on.